Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The desert night was a furnace, the air thick with dust and the metallic tang of blood. Riker Maddox crouched behind a jagged rock in a cave somewhere east of nowhere, his Navy SEAL uniform soaked in sweat and grime. His breath came in short, controlled bursts as bullets ripped through the silence, pinging off stone. His squad, his brothers, were pinned down, their shouts swallowed by the chaos. "Move, damn it," he barked, hauling a wounded teammate, Jace, into cover. The kid's leg was a mess, crimson pooling fast. Riker's hands shook as he tied a tourniquet, his eyes darting to the shadows. This wasn't random, too precise, too coordinated. The enemy knew their position, their timing, their everything. Explosions lit the cave like a hellish fireworks show, rocking the ground. Jace gasped. "Riker, they're everywhere." He was right. Figures in black swarmed the entrance, their gunfire surgical. Riker fired back, dropping two, but the tide kept coming. "Fall back," he yelled, but the radio crackled dead. Then the big one hit, a missile, screaming through the dark, slamming into the cave's heart. The blast threw Riker against the wall, his skull ringing, vision blurring. When the dust settled, he was alone, bodies strewn like broken toys, his squad gone. "No," he growled, dragging himself up, his legs screaming in pain. He stumbled over dunes for hours, dodging drones, fueled by rage and a single thought: survival. Back home, they'd call him a hero. But as he stitched his own wounds under a blood-red dawn, one question burned hotter than the sand. Who sold them out? Who turned his Navy brothers into ash? Wait, I need to tell you something important. Have you ever realized that you keep watching my videos but haven't subscribed yet? This video has reached this point, which means you're enjoying it. So why not subscribe? I have a big goal, for 1,000 subscribers, and you can help me reach it. Think about it. If you don't subscribe now, you might miss my next big video. This is the moment. Hit that subscribe button now. Do it now. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss out. I know you'll do it. And when we hit 4,000 subscribers, I have a special surprise for you. Now let's continue story. Riker stepped off the plane at McCarran Airport, the Vegas sun glaring down like a spotlight on a stage he didn't want to play. His limp was subtle, but every step jabbed a reminder of that cave, his SEAL badge pinned to a past he couldn't shake. The terminal buzzed with slot machines and tourists, but his honed instincts screamed louder. "Trust no one," his training whispered. He scanned the crowd, spotting her, Tatum, his wife, weaving through the chaos in a red dress that hugged her like a lie. Her dark hair bounced, her smile wide, but her eyes? They flickered, just for a second, like a deer hearing a twig snap. "Riker," she called, rushing into his arms. Her hug was tight, too tight, like she was proving something. "You're home, baby. You're a hero," she said, voice syrupy, her fingers brushing his stubbled jaw. He nodded, forcing a grin, but her perfume stung his nose, sharp and unfamiliar. "Missed you," he muttered, studying her. She chattered about dinner plans, her words a blur as he lugged his duffel to the car. Something was off. He felt it in his gut, that SEAL's sixth sense that had kept him alive. In their suburban kitchen, she poured him whiskey, her hand steady but her laugh brittle. "Tell me about it," she pressed, leaning close. He sipped, silent, watching her over the glass. The way she avoided his stare, the way her phone buzzed twice and she ignored it, little cracks in her mask. "Rough mission," he said finally, voice low. "Lost everyone." Her, "Oh honey," felt rehearsed. As she turned to cook, he leaned back, the whiskey burning his throat. She was hiding something, and he'd find it. The nightmares came fast that first night, yanking Riker back to the desert. He was belly crawling over dunes, sand in his teeth, the buzz of drones overhead like angry wasps. His leg throbbed where shrapnel had torn it, a jagged scar now, but he'd survived. "Keep moving," he'd rasped then, dragging himself mile after mile, stitching the wound with a field kit under a dying moon. The memory jolted him awake, sheets soaked, heart hammering in their Vegas bedroom. Tatum slept beside him, her breathing soft, too perfect. He stared at her, the woman he'd sworn to love, and wondered, did she cheer when she thought I was gone? He slid out of bed, wincing as his leg protested, and padded to the living room. Moonlight sliced through blinds, casting bars on the carpet. He poured more whiskey, the bottle clinking too loud in the silence, and replayed it all, the ambush, the precision, the betrayal. Someone talked, he muttered, rubbing his temple. Then he saw it, Tatum's laptop, open on the couch, screen glowing faintly. Curiosity pulled him closer. He tapped a key, and there it was, a search history. Navy SEAL missions, classified ops, Middle East deployments. His stomach dropped. What the hell? He whispered, scrolling. Dates matched his last tour, too close to be random. Footsteps snapped him alert. Tatum shuffled in, rubbing her eyes. Can't sleep? She asked, voice sleepy but tight. He shut the laptop fast, forcing a shrug. That dreams, he said, watching her grab water. She didn't ask about the screen, didn't even glance. Back in bed, he lay still, her warmth beside him a lie he couldn't unfeel. She'd been digging. Why? His mind raced, survival kicking in. Whatever she was up to, he'd outlasted. Tatum stood in the dim glow of their kitchen, the clock ticking past midnight, her phone clutched tight. A perfect plan, she whispered to herself, fingers trembling as she typed. He's back. Stick to the plan. She hit send, her breath catching as the message flew to Lennox. Riker was upstairs, asleep, or so she thought, his return a grenade lobbed into her carefully built world. She'd spent months believing he was dead, months tangled in Lennox's arms, counting cash that should have been hers by now. But here he was, alive, those piercing gray eyes watching her like a hawk. Did he know? No, he couldn't. She'd been too careful. She poured coffee, the bitter steam steadying her nerves, and rehearsed her lines. You're my hero, she'd told him earlier, laying it on thick, tears, smiles, the works. He nodded, quiet, but that silence gnawed at her. Riker wasn't the type to miss much. Years as a SEAL had sharpened him into something deadly, something she'd underestimated. The phone buzzed. Lennox's reply, stay calm. We'll handle it. Handle it how? She paced, heels clicking on tile, picturing his smug grin in that penthouse. She'd sold Riker's secrets for love, for money, for freedom, and now it was all slipping. The floor creaked. She froze, spinning to see shadows shift upstairs. Tatum. Riker's voice rumbled, low and rough. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Just getting water, she called, forcing cheer, shoving the phone in her pocket. He didn't answer, but she felt his stare through the walls. She climbed back to bed, sliding beside him, his heat oppressive. He didn't move, too still. She lay awake, pulse racing, knowing one truth. This wasn't over. Not yet. Riker's mind dragged him back to the war zone, a hell he couldn't escape even in sleep. The cave flashed vivid, walls shaking, dirt choking his lungs as the missile screamed in. Get down, he'd yelled, shoving Jace aside. But the blast swallowed everything. Faces, voices, hope. He'd clawed out of that tomb, sand scraping his skin raw, the buzz of drones hunting him through the night. Not today, he'd growled, patching his leg with trembling hands, every stitch a promise to live. Now, sprawled on the couch in their Vegas home, he jolted awake, whiskey glass tipping in his grip. The living room was quiet, but the war still roared in his skull. He rubbed his eyes, the laptop's glow pulling him like a beacon. Tatum had left it open again, careless or testing him. He opened the history, breath hitching at the searches, SEAL ops, classified leaks, desert missions. Dates lined up, his last deployment, the one that went to hell. What are you digging for? He muttered, scrolling fast. Files he'd locked in a safe, mission logs, coordinates, someone had pried them loose. Tatum? His chest tightened, a fist of betrayal squeezing hard. She'd been in his office, he realized, those late nights she'd claimed were work. A door clicked upstairs. He snapped the screen shut, leaning back as Tatum patted down, yawning in a silk robe. You okay? She asked, voice soft but edged. Nightmares, he grunted, watching her pour tea. Her fingers shook, Just a flicker, but he saw it. She sipped, avoiding his gaze, then shuffled back to bed. He stayed put, staring at the ceiling, the Warzone shifting from desert to home. She'd been hunting his past. For what? He'd find out, and make her regret it. Lennox leaned against his penthouse window, the Vegas Strip glittering below like a river of gold. He swirled bourbon in a crystal glass, a grin splitting his tanned face as he counted the cash stacked on his desk, $2 million, blood money from the hit that almost worked. Trap was flawless, he chuckled, replaying it. Tatum's intel, his underworld contacts, the missile that should have erased Riker. Almost. His phone lit up, her text, he's back. Stick to the plan. His grin faded. Damn it. Tatum, he hissed, dialing her. He's alive? How? Her voice crackled through, tight with nerves. He just showed up, limping, quiet. I'm handling it. Lennox paced, his Italian loafers silent on marble. He's broken, shell-shocked, he snapped. Finish it. Push him over the edge. She hesitated too long. I'm trying, she said, barely audible. He hung up, tossing the phone on a leather couch, irritation flaring. Tatum was soft, always had been. Seducing her was easy, but keeping her sharp? That was the trick. Riker alive messed everything: insurance payouts, their new life, gone. He poured another drink, staring at the city he owned, casinos, deals, power. Riker was a ghost, sure, but ghosts didn't scare him. You're nothing, he muttered, imagining the SEAL's haunted eyes. The plan was still solid. Break him mentally, stage a suicide, cash out. Tatum just needed to hold it together. A knock rattled the door, his bouncer, grim. Sharks are sniffing, money's late. Lennox cursed. Riker's survival was a pebble, but the ripples were growing. He downed the bourbon, the burn steadying him. We'll bury him, he vowed, plotting the next move. Failure wasn't an option, not when the prize was this close. Riker sat in the dark of their Vegas garage, the air thick with oil and silence, his hands steady as he cracked Tatum's phone passcode, her birthday, predictable. The screen flared to life, and there it was, a text to an unknown number. He's back. Stick to the plan. His gut twisted, a cold wave crashing through him. They wanted me dead? He whispered, scrolling fast, piecing it together like a battlefield map. Another message. Cash is safe. He's clueless. Clueless? His jaw clenched, teeth grinding, his rage flared hot and sharp. He'd survived hell, dragged himself from a grave, and this was why his own wife, plotting his end. He dug deeper, finding deleted emails, amateur move. Tatum. One from her to L. Read. Files attached. Make it quick. Attached were his mission logs, coordinates, dates, his squad's every move. You sold me out, he growled, the words bitter on his tongue. The ambush wasn't luck, it was her, feeding intel to someone who'd turned it into a kill order. His fingers hovered over the screen, trembling not from fear, but fury. He trusted her, built a life with her, and she'd traded him for what? Money? Love? Both? Headlights swept the driveway. He locked the phone, slipping it back on the counter as Tatum's heels clicked inside. Riker, she called, voice shaky. He stepped out, forcing calm. Fixing the car, he lied, eyes locked on hers. She nodded, too quick, clutching her purse like a shield. Dinner's ready, she said, turning away. He watched her go, the garage shadows swallowing him. He'd learned the truth, and now he'd use it. They'd built his coffin. Time to turn it on them. Riker sat at the dining table, fork scraping against Tatum's overcooked lasagna, the room heavy with her chatter. Work was crazy, she said, pouring wine, her laugh too loud, her hands fluttering like trapped birds. His home, his sanctuary, felt like a stranger's now, every corner tainted. Pictures of them grinned from the walls, Hawaii, their wedding, her in his arms. Lies, all of it. You okay? She asked, touching his wrist. He pulled back, slow, deliberate. Tired, he grunted, staring at her. She flinched, just a twitch, but he caught it, guilt in her eyes. He chewed, tasting nothing, his mind replaying the phone, the emails. This was his life. She'd shredded his squad, his trust. Tell me about your day, he said, voice flat, testing her. She rambled, casino gossip, a spilled drink, Too much detail, too fast. Busy, she finished, sipping wine, her lipstick smearing the glass. He nodded, leaning back, the chair creaking under his weight. She didn't ask about the mission, didn't mention his scars, didn't care. You're quiet, she pressed, nervous now. Always am. He shot back, holding her gaze until she looked away. Later, alone in his bedroom, he pulled a locked box from under the bed, medals, a knife, a photo of his squad. Jace's grin stared back, gone because of her. This was mine, he muttered, tracing the frame, anger coiling tight. She'd taken it, his piece, his brother's, and sold it cheap. He locked the box, sliding it back, then stood at the window, Vegas lights flickering below. Tatum slept down the hall, oblivious. His fight wasn't over. It was shifting, turning inward. She'd regret crossing him. He'd make sure of it, piece by broken piece. Tatum flipped pancakes in the kitchen, sunlight streaming through the blinds, her apron tied tight like armor. She hummed, loud and off-key, playing the perfect wife pancakes at noon, coffee brewing, Riker's favorite mug ready. Morning, she chirped as he shuffled in, his limp dragging her smile down a notch. Slept late, he said, voice gravelly, sitting slow. She slid a plate over, watching him dig in, her pulse thumping. He was too quiet, always had been, but now it felt like a storm brewing, dark and close. Good, she asked, forcing brightness. He nodded, chewing, eyes on his food, not her. She'd nailed this role for years, doting, sweet, the wife he'd come home to. Last night, she texted Lennox. He suspects nothing. But did he? Riker's stare last night, cold and steady, lingered in her mind. She flipped another pancake, the sizzle masking her shaky breath. Casino's got a big event, she said, casual, testing him. Might stay late. He grunted, sipping coffee, black, bitter, like his mood. Sure, he replied flat. No questions, no pushback, just that damn silence. She turned, wiping her hands, catching him glance at her phone on the counter. Her stomach lurched. Had he seen? No, impossible. She'd locked it, deleted everything. You need anything? She asked, stepping closer, brushing his shoulder. He stiffened, subtle but there. I'm good, he said, standing, towering over her. She smiled, tight, as he limped out. Alone, she gripped the counter, knuckles white. He's fine, she whispered, convincing herself. Lennox was right. Riker was broken, lost in his head. She'd keep playing the wife, keep him blind. But as she scrubbed the pan, a chill crept in. What if she was wrong? Riker adjusted the rearview mirror of his beat-up truck, the Vegas dusk painting the sky orange as he tailed Tatum's sedan. She'd left the house flustered, muttering about a late shift, her perfume trailing like a ghost. He knew better. Her lies stacked up like ammo clips, and he was loaded now. The casino loomed ahead, neon buzzing, but she veered off, weaving through back streets. Where you going, Tatum? He muttered, keeping his distance, headlights off, seal stealth and overdrive. She pulled into a lot near a sleek high-rise, and there he was, tall, slick, stepping out of a Porsche. Her lover. That end in her betrayal. Riker parked, shadows swallowing him, and watched. The guy, Lennox, he'd bet, strode over, all confidence, pulling Tatum into a kiss. Her laugh cut the air, sharp and free, nothing like the tight smile she gave him. His fists clenched, nails biting his palms, anger, hot and alive, surged. You and him, he growled, piecing it louder. She'd played the wife while building this, whatever it was with Mr. Porsche. Money? Escape? His death had been their ticket, and here they were, laughing like it was nothing. Lennox handed her a bag, bulky, heavy, and she peeked inside, nodding fast. Riker's mind raced. Cash, maybe, or proof of their deal. He snapped a photo with his phone, the click loud in his ears. They parted, her back to the casino, him to the high-rise. Riker stayed put, breathing slow, the truck's engine ticking as it cooled. You and him think I'm done, he said to the night, a vow forming. He'd shadow them both, dig deeper, turn there, and into his weapon. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Lennox leaned back in his Porsche, the leather creaking under his tailored suit, as he cruised the strip, lights flashing across his smug face. The boyfriend had it all: penthouse, deals, Tatum, until Riker stumbled back from the dead. He smirked, replaying her kiss in the lot, her nervous energy electric against him. He's a shell, he told her, brushing off her jitters. A ghost with a limp, nothing to worry about. The bag he'd given her, $500,000, a taste of their payout, sealed it. She'd stick with him, scared or not. He pulled into his garage, the engine purring low, and checked his phone. Her text: "He's quiet. Too quiet. Toughen up," he muttered, typing back. "He's broken. Push him." Riker was a loose end, sure, but Lennox thrived on loose ends, twisting them, snapping them. He'd hired the hit through a fixer, used Tatum's intel, clean, untraceable. Almost. Should have doubled the blast, he chuckled, stepping into his private elevator, the city shrinking below as he rose. In his penthouse, he poured scotch, the amber glinting like his future. Tatum was his spark, wild, needy, perfect for this game. "We're golden," he said aloud, imagining her ditching that drab house for his bed full-time. A noise faint, a scrape, jerked his head. He froze, glass halfway to his lips. "Who's there?" he called, stepping to the window. Nothing but Vegas stared back. He laughed it off, nerves, maybe hers rubbing off. Riker was a shadow, not a threat. "You're mine," he toasted to the night, meaning Tatum, the money, all of it. He didn't see the truck idling blocks away, didn't hear the silent vow. The boyfriend was king until the ghost struck back. Riker hunched over his kitchen table, the clock ticking past 2 a.m., papers spread like a war map, emails he'd pulled from Tatum's cracked phone, bank logs he'd hacked from a burner laptop. Each line screamed it. They'd planned his death, meticulous and cold. One email to Lennox read, "Coordinates locked. Payment wired." Another, older, "He's deployed, do it." His mission files, stolen from his safe, had been their blueprint, sold to killers who'd turned his squad to dust. "You planned this," he hissed, voice shaking, fingers tracing dates that matched his nightmare. $2 million for his head, split between them. He leaned back, the chair groaning, and rubbed his scarred leg, proof he'd survived their scheme. The photo from the lot burned in his pocket. Lennox, Tatum, that bag. "Planned it all," he said, louder, letting rage fill the quiet house. He'd been a pawn, bleeding out while they counted cash. Now he'd flip it, plan his own move, slow and sharp. He scribbled notes, tracked the money, seed doubt, his seal mind clicking like a loaded clip. A creak upstairs, Tatum shifting in bed. He stilled, listening, then stood, hiding the papers in a vent. She couldn't know he knew, not yet. "Your turn's coming," he promised, stepping outside, the night air cool on his face. He'd unravel their plot, thread by thread, make them choke on it. But hey, while we're at it, let's switch gears for a sec. Picture this story unfolding. Where you watching from? Drop your city in your mind. Maybe whisper it to the dark, like, "Hey, I'm in Chicago. What's Riker doing next?" Keeps us connected, right? Back to it. What's their next slip? How's this trap gonna snap? Riker crouched in the garage, the hum of his truck's engine fading as he rigged Tatum's phone with a ghost app, untraceable, his own design. "It's worn out," he muttered, uploading a fake text to Lennox. "She's turning on us, cops next." He hit send, watching the screen flicker, then slipped the phone back on the kitchen counter before dawn broke. Tatum and Lennox thought they held the reins, but he'd just lit a fuse. It'd burn slow, then blow their trust to pieces. He leaned against the wall, the cold concrete grounding him, his pulse steady but fierce. Upstairs, Tatum stirred, her footsteps soft as she patted down. "Coffee?" she asked, voice groggy, tying her rope. He nodded, playing the tired vet, letting her prattle about work while he sipped black brew. Her phone buzzed. Lennox's reply. "What the hell? Call me." She glanced at it, frown creasing her brow, then tucked it away fast. "Everything okay?" Riker asked, casual, watching her squirm. "Yeah. Co-worker," she stammered, turning to the sink. Liar. He hid a smirk behind his mug. She'd call Lennox soon, panicked, and the cracks would widen. He'd seen it in war plant doubt. Watch it fester. "It's done," he thought, picturing their frantic fight, her shrill denials, his barking rage. They'd built this mess to bury him. Now it'd bury them. He stood, stretching his bad leg, the aching reminder of what they'd cost him, Jace, the squad, his peace. Gonna fix the truck, he said, heading out, leaving her to stew. The garage door shut, sealing him in shadow. It wasn't just revenge, it was justice, his way. Step one clicked into place. Next, he tightened the noose. Tatum slammed her car door in the casino lot, the neon glow harsh against her pale face as she dialed Lennox, her nails biting her palm. For us, she hissed into the phone, voice trembling, "You've got to trust me." His text, "She's turning on us," had hit like a slap, and now his cold tone iced her spine. "You're weak, Tatum," he snapped, his penthouse wind whistling through the call. "Cops? Really?" She paced, heels clicking, panic clawing her chest. "I didn't. I'd never," she pleaded, glancing around, alone, but it didn't feel that way. "He's messing with me," she said, quieter, picturing Riker's blank stare at breakfast. "That text wasn't mine. Someone's got my phone." Lennox laughed, sharp and mean. "You're slipping. Fix it, or I will." The line went dead, leaving her stranded, the bag of cash in her trunk suddenly heavy. "For us," she repeated, a mantra, clutching the wheel as she drove home. She'd sold Riker out for Lennox, for love, for freedom, but now it felt like quicksand, pulling her under. Riker watched from a rooftop, binoculars steady, a bug in her car feeding him every word. "For you, huh?" he muttered, jaw tight. Her desperation was gold. He'd planted the seed, and she was watering it herself. He adjusted the earpiece, her shaky breaths crackling through. She didn't suspect him, not yet, but Lennox's doubt was a crack he'd widen. "You did this for yourselves," he said to the night, thinking of his squad's graves. He'd make it hurt, for them, for him. The city sprawled below, oblivious, as he mapped his next play. Push her harder, let her drag Lennox down. This was for keeps, and he'd win. Riker sat on the porch, dusk settling over Vegas, a beer sweating in his hand as memories clawed free. Tatum laughing on a pier in San Diego, her hair wild in the wind. Early days, when love was real, not a knife in his back. "Forever," she'd whispered, kissing him under stars, his seal tags cool against her skin. He believed it, fought for it through deployments, built a home for it. No? He crushed the can, metal crumpling loud, the taste sour. "Love's dead," he said, tossing it into the yard, the clank echoing. Inside, Tatum hummed, cooking dinner, playing her part, oblivious to his unraveling. He stood, limping to the garage, and pulled a box from a shelf, letters, photos, her in a sundress. He lit a match, the flame-licking paper, her smile curling dash. "You killed it," he growled, watching it burn, smoke stinging his eyes. Love had been his anchor. She'd cut the line, traded it for cash and a slick stranger. The fire died, leaving charred scraps. He kicked them aside, chest tight. Back in the house, she set the table, all smiles. "Steak tonight," she said, brushing his arm. He nodded, sitting, the touch hollow. "Remember San Diego?" he asked, voice low, testing. Her eyes flickered, fear, then softened. "Best trip ever," she lied, cutting meat. He ate, silent, the food tasteless. Love was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp edge. He'd use it now, wield it. She chattered, nervous, filling the void he left. "Gotta run an errand," he said after, grabbing keys. Outside, he breathed deep, the night alive with his purpose. Love was their bait, vengeance was his hook. Time to reel them in. Tatum stormed into the kitchen, her phone clutched like a lifeline, the screen glowing with Lennox's latest jab. "Where's the money?" "You screwing me?" "No," she hissed, slamming it down, her breath ragged. She and Lennox were fraying, fast. Riker's fake text had done its job, and now there, and was a fault line splitting wide. She paced, the tiles cold under her bare feet, replaying his call, his voice icy, accusing. "You took it, didn't you?" he'd snarled. She hadn't. Had she? But the cash from the car was gone, vanished overnight. "He's doing this," she whispered, picturing Riker's blank stare. Impossible. He was clueless. Right? Upstairs, Riker listened through a tiny mic hidden in her purse, his lips curling as her panic crackled live. "And you're crumbling," he muttered, hunched over his laptop in the dark. He'd hacked their account, drained it, funneled it to a veterans fund, leaving them blind and clawing. The screen showed zeros where millions once Saturday, you and him, he said, voice low, savoring their chaos. He'd heard her beg Lennox, "It's not me." And his scoff, "Prove it." That was their poison now, and he was the brewer. She grabbed her keys, muttering, "I'll fix this," and sped off. Riker followed, truck rumbling, staying back as she hit Lennox's high-rise. He parked, watching her pound his door, screaming, "Wild." Lennox yanked it open, shirtless, furious. "You played me," he bellowed, shoving her. She stumbled, firing back. "You lost it." Riker leaned against his seat, the fight music to his ears. "And you're done," he said, starting the engine. There, and it was ash, he'd stoked the flames. Next step, tighten the screws. Riker sat in a diner off the strip, neon buzzing outside, a coffee cooling as he traced the money's trail on his laptop. 2 million blood money for his squad's graves had flowed from a shadow account to Tatum and Lennox. "Greed's your god," he growled, digging deeper. He'd siphoned it all, every cent, rerouting it to a vet charity in Jace's name. The screen flashed, donation complete. "That's for you, brother," he said, rubbing his leg, the scar a silent witness. They'd sold him for cash. He'd turned it into their noose. Across town, Tatum tore through her car, seat slashed, screaming, "Where is it?" The bag, $500,000, gone. She'd stashed it in the trunk, checked it yesterday now. Nothing. "Lennox," she spat, blaming him, her hands shaking as she dialed. "You took it," she yelled when he picked up. "You're insane," he shot back, voice raw. "It's gone. Sharks are circling." She froze. "Lone sharks?" "What did you do?" she demanded. "Your mess," he barked, hanging up. She sank to the pavement, head in hands. Money was their glue, and it was evaporating. Riker watched the diner TV news of a vet center opening, funded by an anonymous hero. He smirked, sipping coffee. Your money built that, he thought, imagining their panic. He tracked their deals, casino cuts, dirty loans, knowing it had collapsed without the cash cushion. A text from his bug. Sharks want payment, now. Lennox's empire was crumbling, and Tatum's dream with it. He stood, tossing a tip, the clink loud in his ears. "Money's your chain," he said, limping out. He'd stripped it bare next. He'd watched them choke on the loss. Step by step, he'd bury them with their own greed. Riker crouched in the garage, tools scattered, rigging a camera smaller than a dime, navy grit in his veins. "Honor's my code," he muttered, wiring it to stream live from Lennox's penthouse. He'd slipped in earlier, disguised as a maintenance guy, hood up, limp hidden, planting it behind a vent. His training wasn't rusting. It was sharpening, turning him into a predator on home soil. The laptop blinked on, showing Lennox pacing, phone to his ear, yelling about money, sharks, Tatum. "She's dead weight," he roared. Riker grinned, cold and hard. "Keep talking." Back in the desert, he'd led with precision, saved lives, took them when he had to. Now, that Navy SEAL drove him to dismantle theirs. He'd learned their rhythm, her lies, his arrogance, and flipped it. The camera caught Tatum bursting in, hair wild. "You ruined us," she screamed, throwing a glass. It shattered, amber liquid pooling. Lennox lunged, grabbing her arms. "You lost the cash," he bellowed. Riker leaned closer, the feed crisp, every word a gift. "Honor's what you don't get," he said, thinking of Jace, the squad, their sacrifice. He adjusted the audio, their fight a symphony of collapse, her sobs, his threats. "Navy taught me patience," he whispered, saving the clip. This wasn't just revenge, it was duty, cleaning a stain on his world. He'd send it to the Sharks later, anonymous, lethal, let them tear Lennox apart. Tatum's tears wouldn't save her either. He stood, stretching his bad leg, the Ica badge. "You messed with the wrong man," he told the screen, their chaos as fuel. The Navy in him wasn't dead, it was awake, hunting. Time to push harder, Make them bleed their own mess. Riker perched on a rooftop across from Lennox's penthouse, the Vegas night humming below, his binoculars steady as a sniper's scope. SEAL precision wasn't just muscle, it was mind, and he wielded it now, lethal and silent. "You're mine," he muttered, watching Lennox storm around, phone in hand, barking orders. Riker had leaked fake intel to the loan sharks. Tatum's skimming your cut, and the feed showed it working. A thug loomed on screen, meaty fist pounding Lennox's desk. "Where's our money?" the guy growled. Lennox paled, stammering. "She took it. Check her." Riker's lips twitched perfect. He'd trained for this. Years of missions, reading enemies, bending chaos. The camera he'd planted caught every flinch, every curse as Lennox dialed Tatum. "You set me up," he yelled when she answered, voice cracking. She screamed back, "You're paranoid." Their trust a shredded rag now. Riker adjusted his earpiece, her sobs a bonus track. "Seals don't break," he said, thinking of the cave, the blood, his survival against their trap. This was his battlefield, urban and raw, and he was winning. A car screeched below Tatum's, peeling into the lot. She bolted up, bursting in, wild-eyed. "You're ruining us," she shrieked, lunging at Lennox. He shoved her back, glass crashing. Riker zoomed in, savoring the wreckage. "That's it, tear each other down," he whispered, his pulse steady, cold. He'd honed this skill, turn foes inward, let them bleed themselves dry. The thug grabbed Lennox, fist raised. "Pay up, or you're meat." Riker stood, stretching his leg, the city a chessboard below. "Check," he said, pocketing the binoculars. His seal edge was carving them apart. Next move, checkmate. Tatum slumped on her couch, the house dark, a half-empty whiskey bottle tipping in her lap. "He's planning something," she muttered, voice slurred, replaying Riker's quiet stare, too calm, too steady. She'd survived his return, kept the act up, but now? Her nerves frayed like old wire, sparking panic. The money, gone. Lennox turning. "I'm still here," she told herself, gulping more, the burn grounding her. She'd outlasted him once, thought him dead, danced on his grave with Lennox. But he'd crawled back, a shadow that wouldn't fade. She stumbled to the window, peering out. His truck was gone. "Where are you?" she hissed, fear curling tight. The fight with Lennox replayed, his hands on her. His rage, she'd barely survived that too. "He thinks I took it," she said, laughing, bitter and shrill. The cash vanishing wasn't her. Someone else was pulling strings. Riker? No, he was broken, lost in his head. Wasn't he? She grabbed her phone, texting Lennox. "We're screwed. Fix it." No reply. "I survived this," she vowed, staggering to the kitchen, splashing water on her face. Outside, Riker watched from a neighbor's yard, night vision goggles painting her in green. "You survived nothing," he growled, her silhouette swaying, weak, unraveling. He'd survived their trap, sand, blood, death, and now he'd outlast her game. The bug in her purse fed him her ramblings, paranoia eating her alive. Good, he thought, slipping away, boots silent on grass. She'd built this cage. He'd lock her in it. Her whiskey-soaked defiance was smoke. He'd fan it till it choked her. "I'm the one who survives," he said, vanishing into the dark. She learned that soon, too late to run. Riker leaned against his truck, parked in an alley near the strip, the city's pulse pounding through the night. "A new battlefield," he muttered, tweaking a burner phone, his latest weapon. He typed a fake call log, Tatum to Sharks. "I've got your cash," and slipped it into her phone's cloud, syncing it live. "Let's see you dodge this," he said, tossing the burner in a dumpster, the clang swallowed by traffic. She'd unravel fast now. Lennox already doubted her, and this snapped the thread. He lit a cigarette, rare for him, the smoke curling like his plan, slow, deliberate, deadly. Back home, Tatum scrolled her phone, bleary-eyed, when the log popped up. "What the—" she gasped, dropping the whiskey glass. It shattered, amber pooling. "I didn't call them," she yelled, scrolling, timestamps, numbers, all fake but real enough to damn her. "He's framing me," she whispered, meaning Lennox, her hands shaking. She dialed him, voice shrill. "You set me up." He laughed, harsh, unhinged. "You're done, Tatum, I'm out." The line cut, leaving her screaming at silence. No, no, she sobbed, hurling the phone. It cracked against the wall. Riker listened through the bug, parked blocks away, her meltdown music to his ears. A little push, he said, exhaling smoke, and you're gone. She'd built a castle of lies. Now it was rubble. He pictured her pacing, clawing for control, none left. This is my field now, he told the night, flicking the cigarette away, the ember dying fast. She'd call it betrayal. He called it justice. A new war, his rules. Step 1, break her. He started the truck, the rumble low, ready for the next strike. She'd hear his echo soon, too late to fight back. Lennox stood in his penthouse, the glass walls trembling as two bruisers, lone shark muscle, trashed the place. A lamp crashed, shards flying, the air thick with their growls. Where's our cash, pretty boy? The bigger one snarled, flipping a marble table, crack, like it was cardboard. Lennox backed up, hands raised, his silk shirt clinging with sweat. It's Tatum, she took it, he yelled, voice pitching high. The Warzone wasn't just memory now, it was here, his empire a battlefield, and he was losing. Check her car, check her, he begged, dodging a fist that grazed his jaw. The second thug, bald and scarred, grabbed his collar, slamming him against the window. Vegas sprawled below, mocking him. You promised $2 million. Where is it? Lennox choked. She screwed us, set me up. His phone buzzed Tatum's name, but he couldn't reach it, pinned like a bug. You're dead meat, Baldy hissed, cracking knuckles. Lennox's mind raced. Riker's ghost loomed. But no, this was her, double-crossing him. I'll get it back, he gasped, tasting blood. They dropped him, boots thudding out, leaving wreckage, his couch gutted, bar smashed. He crawled to the phone, dialing her. You did this, he roared when she picked up, her sobs crackling through. I didn't. Someone's framing me, she screamed. Liar, he spat, kicking glass, his Warzone, her fault. Fix it, or you're next. He hung up, panting, the city lights blurring through tears. His throne was rubble, money gone, sharks circling. I'll kill her, he vowed, grabbing a gun from a drawer, the click loud in the ruin. This wasn't just survival. It was war, and he'd fight dirty. Riker sat in his truck, parked in a shadowed alley, the laptop glowing as he typed a forged doc. Tatum's confession. I sold Lennox out. Trap set, he muttered, uploading it to Lennox's cloud, syncing it live. He'd hacked their systems days ago, a SEAL's quiet blade, and now he'd spring it. The penthouse feed flickered, Lennox, bruised, gun in hand, scrolling his phone. What's this? He barked, opening the file. Riker's work, flawless, damning. She's confessing? Lennox's face twisted, rage boiling over. That snake, he yelled, slamming the desk. Across town, Tatum sped home, knuckles white on the wheel, Lennox's threat. You're next, ringing in her ears. He's lost it, she whispered, checking mirrors, alone, but trapped, the walls closing in. She didn't see Riker's truck tailing her, didn't hear the bug in her car feeding him her gasps. I didn't do it, she cried, slamming the dashboard, crack, as panic choked her. Riker smirked, 2 blocks back. Believe it, he said, watching her swerve. The trap wasn't just Lennox's, it was hers, too, a cage of their own making. Lennox stormed out, gun tucked, heading for her house. Riker's feed tracked him, a dot on the map. Come on, Riker urged, starting the engine, following slow. At her place, Tatum bolted inside, locking doors useless. Lennox pounded, open up. She screamed, get out. He kicked it down, with splintering. You sold me. He roared, waving the phone. She froze. I didn't write that. Riker parked nearby, listening. Fist flew, glass broke. Trap sprung, he said, voice cold. They'd rip each other apart, his hands clean. He leaned back, the night alive with their ruin. Step 1, chaos. Step 2, collapse. Tatum cowered in her living room, a lamp toppled, as Lennox loomed, gun trembling in his grip. You learn quick, huh? He snarled, shoving the phone at her, confession glaring on screen. I didn't write it, she screamed, voice raw, backing into the couch. Cops love this. My name all over it, he yelled, pacing, wild-eyed. She learned then. Someone was pulling strings, and it wasn't him. You think I'd turn? She shot back, tears streaking her face. He laughed, bitter, unhinged. You're a leech, always were. She grabbed a vase, hurling it, smash, missing him by inches. You turned on me, she cried, the truth sinking in. He'd cut her loose, believing the lie. Sharks'll got me 'cause of you, he roared, lunging. She ducked, scrambling to the kitchen. It's not me, she pleaded, grabbing a knife, clink, holding it shaky. He froze, gun up, a standoff in their wreckage. Someone's playing us, she gasped, realization dawning. Riker? No, he was broken, right? Doubt not her, sharp and cold. Riker watched from outside, the bug feeding him every word, every crash. She's learning, he muttered, parked in shadows, the feed crackling, her fear, his panic. Too late, he added, lighting a cigarette, the flare brief in the dark. She'd sold him out, learned nothing until now, when it didn't matter. Lennox kicked a chair, crunch, screaming. You're dead. She sobbed. We're both dead. Riker exhaled smoke, calm as death. Learn it all, he said, watching their world implode, his trap, their lesson. He taught them fear, and they'd teach each other pain. Keep going, he whispered, the night swallowing his truck. They'd learn the cost, his way, his time. Riker stood in the backyard, the Vegas night cool against his skin, a locked box at his feet, his past, his squad, his fight. This is for them, he said, voice low, flipping it open. Metals glinted, bronze star, purple heart, earned in blood, not glory. Jace's photo stared up, frozen mid-laugh, a kid who'd trusted him. You didn't deserve it, Riker growled, tracing the frame, the ache in his chest sharp, his squad, his brothers, gone because of her. Tatum's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was theirs, a wound he'd carry forever. He pulled a lighter, flicking it, flame danced, hungry. She took this, he muttered, torching a letter, love you. Riker, her handwriting curling dash. His home, his life, she'd gutted it, sold it to Lennox for a payout. The fire ate fast, smoke stinging his eyes, he didn't blink. For you, he told the ghosts, tossing in a mission patch, SEAL Team 6, faded but fierce. Inside, Tatum slept, oblivious, her snores faint through the window. His world, he said, kicking dirt over the embers, not yours anymore. He limped to the garage, locking the box away, his resolve steel now. She'd shattered his trust, his men, but not him. They're mine, he vowed, thinking of Jace, the others, his to avenge. The bug's feed crackled, her muttering in sleep, restless. Good, she'd feel it soon. He grabbed his keys, heading out, the truck rumbling alive. This is his fight, he told the night, picturing their chaos, Lennox's rage, her panic. He'd reclaim what was his, piece by piece, starting with their ruin. The stars above flickered, witnesses to his oath. For them, he repeated, driving off, a shadow with a mission. Tatum slumped at the kitchen table, dawn creeping through blinds, a whiskey bottle her only company, empty now, like her. I'm the wife, she whispered, voice cracked, staring at her ring. Dull, meaningless. The facade was dust, Riker's silence, Lennox's gun, the missing money. She'd lost the script. She'd played it perfect. Breakfasts, kisses, lies, kept him blind while she spun her web. He's broken, she'd told herself, flipping pancakes, smiling through it. No? Her hand shook, the knife from last night still on the counter, useless against the storm she'd brewed. She stood, swaying, and caught her reflection, hollow eyes, smeared mascara. What happened? She asked it, gripping the sink, cold, steadying. Riker's face flashed, those eyes, too sharp, too still. He knows, she gasped, the thought a punch. No, couldn't be. She'd locked the phone, hid the cash, or tried. Lennox turned, she muttered, blaming him, but doubt clawed deeper. The fight, his screams, her pleas, someone else was pulling levers, and she was dangling. I'm still the wife, she said, louder, forcing it. Riker's shadow loomed anyway. Footsteps, his boots on gravel outside. She froze, heart slamming, then rushed to the stove, coffee on, act up. He walked in, limping, face blank. Morning, she chirped, pouring, her hand slipped, mug clattering. Rough night? He asked, voice flat, sitting slow. Just work, she lied, smiling tight, fake. He nodded, sipping, eyes locked on her, piercing, unreadable. Gotta run, he said, standing, brushing past, his touch ice. She watched him go, breath held, then sank to the floor, sobbing. He knows, she whispered again, certainty sinking in. The wife was a mask, slipping, useless. She'd built this cage, now it locked her in. Riker parked near Lennox's high-rise, Dawn painting it gold, his laptop humming as he struck again, hacking Tatum's power bill, cutting her lights. You and him fall, he growled, hitting enter. Her house went dark, miles away. The bug crackled. Her yelp, what now? And he grinned, cold and steady. And was their bond. Her and Lennox, a twisted duo, now his hammer to smash it. He'd drained their cash, planted lies. Each move a brick pulled from their wall. Keep fighting, he muttered, switching feeds. Lennox's penthouse, still trashed, him pacing, gun out. Tatum's voice burst through, calling Lennox, frantic. Power's gone. Someone's after me, she cried. You're paranoid. He barked, sharks are here. Your fault. She screamed, fix it. He hung up, cursing her name. Riker leaned back, the truck's leather creaking, music, pure and raw. And you're blind, he said, watching their spiral, her alone, him hunted. He'd tailed her yesterday, seen her break, now Lennox cracked too. Thugs at his door. Pay up, one yelled. Thud. Furniture breaking. She took it. Lennox pleaded, useless. Riker switched the hack. Lennox's Porsche alarm blared, stranding him. And you're stuck, he whispered, picturing the chaos, her dark house, his trapped car. There, and was poisoned now, each blaming the other, clawing for air. He'd stripped their trust, their cash, left them naked, fighting shadows. You built this, he told the screen, their voices overlapping, her sobs, his threats. He started the truck, rolling out, the city waking around him. And I'm the end, he vowed, a ghost in their wreckage. Next, he'd tighten it, push them to the edge, let them jump. The game was his, checkmate looming. Lennox staggered through his penthouse, the city's glow mocking him through shattered glass, his silk shirt torn and bloody. Boyfriend's done, he muttered, spitting red. Two sharks had worked him over, fists like hammers. Where's the cash? They'd roared, smashing his jaw, crack, before dumping him on the floor. Tatum, she's got it, he'd gasped, curling tight as boots slammed his ribs. Thud, pain bursting white hot. They'd left, growling. Next time, you're dead, the door banging shut. He crawled to the couch, groaning, his kingdom, his swagger, gone. He grabbed his phone, hands shaking. Her fault, all of it. You're dead, he rasped, dialing Riker's burner. Anonymous, slipped to him days ago. She's yours, he croaked when it picked up. Tatum, ruined me. Take her. Static answered. Then a voice, low, chilling. You're next. Click, line dead. Lennox froze, sweat beading. Riker? No, couldn't be. Broken vet, right? He's nothing, he whispered, clutching his gun. Click, checking the clip. But the voice stuck, a splinter in his skull. He stumbled to the window, Vegas sprawling. Once his, now a trap. Boyfriend, he laughed, bitter, hollow. Thinking of Tatum, her kisses, her lies. She dragged him here, money gone, sharks hunting. I was king, he said, gripping the gun, picturing her smug face. He'd find her, end her, before they got him. A car screeched below, thugs back. He ducked, heart slamming, alone, cornered. She's mine, he vowed, meaning revenge, not love. Love was ash now. He limped to the door, blood dripping, drip, on marble. The boyfriend was a ghost, hunted, raging. Riker's shadow loomed, unseen. I'll win, he lied to the dark, stepping out. Too late, checkmate was closing. Riker sat in a motel off the strip, blinds cracked, laptop humming as he mailed Tatum's own words. Coordinates locked. Payment wired to an FBI tip line, anonymous, untraceable. Planned it all, he growled, hitting send, the screen flashing, received. Flashback hit hard. Her sneaking into his office, rifling his safe, giggling with Lennox over wine. He's gone, she'd said then, planning his grave, his squad's too, while he bled in sand. You wrote this, he told the night, her emails now a noose, her handwriting, her greed, her end. He leaned back, chair creaking, replaying it. Months of her plotting, seducing Lennox, selling secrets. Clean hit. Lennox had called it. She'd nodded, eyes gleaming, counting cash in her head. Riker rubbed his leg, scar throbbing, proof they'd failed. Plan my death, he said, pulling the motel's stale coffee closer, the bitterness matching his mood. The FBI dig now, bank trails, her prints on files. He'd made sure it stuck. Your move, he muttered, imagining her panic when cuffs clicked. The bug crackled, her voice, home, frantic. They're coming, Lennox ratted, she cried, packing, zip, bags thumping. Wrong. Lennox was running, not talking, but let her think it. You planned this life, Riker whispered, watching her dot on his tracker, fleeing, scared. She'd built a castle on his bones, now it'd crush her. He stood, stretching, limp easing, grabbing his keys. Time to watch, he said, the motel doors slamming bang, behind him. He'd planned this turn. Her words, her trap, flipped back. The desert taught him patience. Vegas taught him ruthlessness. Check, he told the stars, driving off. Her downfall was scripted, his pen. She'd learn. Too late. Who'd outplanned who? Tatum raced down I-15, Vegas shrinking in her rear view, her sedan rattling. Bags stuffed with clothes, no cash. It's over, she gasped, hands slick on the wheel, Lennox's threat. You're dead, looping loud. The house, dark, empty, money gone, power cut, someone torched her world. Riker, she whispered, shaking it off. Impossible, he was a shell. But the FBI tip, her emails leaking, hit her phone, a news alert, local woman tied to seal it. No, no, she screamed, swerving, honk, tires squealing. It was done, her life, her plan, ashes. Riker watched from a diner, TV blaring, cops raiding Lennox's penthouse, cuffs snapping. It's finished, he muttered. Sipping coffee, his tip had landed. Hard. The feed showed Tatum speeding, tracked by his bug, her sobs crackling. They're after me, she cried to no one, voice breaking crack, as panic ate her. He'd flipped it, her hit, their greed, into their cage. You built this, he said, picturing Jace's grin, justice now, clean and cold. The screen cut to Lennox, bloody, raging, dragged out. Her fault, he yelled, useless. Tatum pulled off, a gas station flickering ahead, her chest heaving, run where? It's my fault, she sobbed, slamming the dash, thud, glass crunching her knuckles. The plan, love, money, freedom imploded, and she saw it, Riker's hand. Maybe, turning screws. He knew, she gasped, terror sinking in too late. Riker stood, tossing cash, clink, and limped out, truck roaring alive. It's over for them, he told the night, tracking her dot, slowing, trapped. He'd ended it, her scheme, his painted checkmate clicked. Run all you want, he whispered, driving closer. Her end was here, his start beyond it. The diner faded, justice served, his way. Lennox sat in a holding cell, the clang of bars still ringing, his bruised face throbbing. Shark's fists, not cops, had left their mark. For nothing, he snarled, pacing the concrete box 2 steps, turn, repeat, his voice bouncing off walls. The trial loomed. FBI had everything, Tatum's emails, his deals, his empire dust now. She did this, he spat, kicking the cot, clang, metal screeching. Her face flashed, those lips, that laugh, selling him out, or so he thought. For us, she'd purred once, counting cash, now it was cuffs, not freedom. He slumped, head in hands, blood crusted his knuckles, replaying her call. "They're coming," she'd screamed. He'd hung up, done. "You're the leak," he muttered, believing Riker's forgery. Her confession burned in his skull. For love, he laughed, harsh, broken, thinking of her in his bed, plotting his grave too. The guard banged, thud, yelling, "Quiet." Lennox glared, pacing again, trapped alone. "She's next," he vowed, fists clenching. Useless now, but hate kept him warm. Riker watched from a bar TV, beer untouched, cops hauling Lennox, news ticker screaming, local mogul busted. "For you," he whispered, meaning Jace, the squad. His tip had landed, their ruin sealed. Tatum's feed crackled. She'd stopped, gas station, sobbing. "For them," he added, sipping, bitter, fitting. They'd chased love, money, for themselves, while he fought for ghosts. "You lost," he told the screen, Lennox's glare meeting hers in split shots. Mutual ruin, his gift. He stood, tossing bills, clink, and limped out, truck rumbling. "For me too," he said, driving off. Justice wasn't just theirs, it was his healing. The bar faded, Checkmate near, for all of them. Riker pulled into a vet hall lot, dusk settling, gravel crunching under tires, his first stop since the chaos peaked. Inside, Kira, Jace's widow, greeted him, her brown eyes warm, tired. "You made it," she said, hugging him, soft, brief, a friend's touch. "Love's not gone," she murmured, nodding at vets laughing, "cards, beers, life, his donation built this." "Yeah," he grunted, shifting. Her words hit, stirring ash where Tatum's betrayal burned. "For them," he said, meaning the squad, dodging her gaze. Love wasn't his game now. Not yet. She handed him a coffee, black, steaming, her fingers brushing his. "Heard the news," she said, low. "Lennox, Tatum, busted. You okay?" He nodded, lie sipping, the burn grounding him. Flashback, Tatum's, "I love you." San Diego waves crashing, gone. A lie he torched. "Love's a weapon," he muttered, thinking of her schemes. Kira frowned, catching it. "Not always," she countered, sitting close. Her comma thread he didn't pull. "Jace be proud," she added, his chest tightened, her smile soft. Hope, not romance, but something. Outside, he lit a cigarette, rare, smoke curling, Vegas glowing distant. "Love's theirs," he told the night. Tatum, Lennox, twisted in it. His was duty, vengeance. Kira stepped out, coat on. "Stay for cards?" she asked. No push, just there. "Maybe," he said, first crack in his wall. She nodded, leaving. Her truck faded, dust settling. Love's dead, he'd told himself. Now? A spark flickered. Friendship, maybe more, too soon to tell. He crushed the smoke, snap, and limped inside, vets cheering him. "For you," he whispered. Jace, the squad. Love wasn't gone, just buried. He'd dig later. First, finish the fight. Tatum stood in a courtroom, wrists raw from cuffs, her red dress swapped for gray. Lennox across, glaring, his suit wrinkled, bloody. "And you're guilty," the judge boomed, hammer banging, sentencing them. Her for fraud, him for conspiracy, years stacking high. "And you did this." Lennox hissed, lunging. Guards grabbed him. Her eyes burned, tears held back. "You turned," she shot. Lie. They'd both fallen, Riker's strings unseen. "Guilty," echoed. Her and him, tethered in ruin. His empire, her dreams, ash now. Riker watched from the back, stone-faced, public seats, anonymous. His tip, his leaks, landing hard. "And you're done," he muttered. There, and was love, greed. His was justice, delivered cold. The bug, dead now, had sung their end. Her sobs, his threats, fed to the FBI, wrapped tight. "She sold me," Lennox yelled. Judge banged. Useless, the gavel final. Tatum's head dropped. Hair limp, spirit cracked. He knew. She whispered, meaning Riker. Too late, truth dawning. Her, and with Lennox her chains. Guards hauled them, Lennox kicking, her shuffling. Riker stood, limping out, sun hit, harsh. And I won, he told the sky, truck waiting, engine growled alive. Their trial was theater, his script, years behind bars, there, and a sentence. He drove, radio off, silence his prize, thinking of Jace, the squad, avenged. You and him, he said, picturing their cells, separate, broken, his plan flawless. A diner loomed. He stopped, coffee calling, life moving, they're stopped. And it's over, he vowed. Checkmate clicked, clean. The courtroom faded, her glare, his rage locked away, his shadow free. He sipped, bitter, good, ready for what's next. Riker stood outside the new vet rehab center, a brick building off a Vegas back road, dusk painting it gold, Jace's haven, the sign read, funded by their dirty money. Your greed built this, he muttered, hands in pockets, 2 million, siphoned clean, turned into beds, therapy rooms, hope. He'd hacked their accounts, rerouted every dime, Lennox's deals, Tatum's stash, watching zeros bloom where their dreams died. Money over me, he said, voice low, scar on his leg throbbed, a reminder they'd cashed him out, lost it all. Inside, Kira gave him a tour, vet shuffled, some smiling, his coffee steamed, bitter as justice. 2 mil, anonymous, she said. Odd. Someone's a saint. He shrugged, sinner, maybe, sipping slow. They'd hate this, he thought, Tatum counting bills, Lennox flashing stacks, now it healed scars they'd carved. Worth it? Kira asked, leaning close, her warmth a thread he didn't pull. Yeah, he grunted for Jace. The squad, money's stench washed clean. You're quiet, she noted, smile soft. Always, he replied, hiding a grin. Her calm settled him. Outside, news vans buzzed. Lennox's sentencing, Tatum's 2 funds missing, ticker screamed. Money's your chain, he whispered, picturing their cells, empty pockets, full regrets, his final twist. He tracked it, casino cuts, blood cash, flipped it into this. They're broke, Kira said, TV showed cuffs, good riddance. He nodded, checkmate landed, their greed is weapon. Let's walk, she offered, he followed, gravel crunching, money's echo fading. For them, he told the sky, squad avenged, his cut deeper, healing slow. The center glowed, his mark, their cost, justice and brick and mortar. Riker leaned against a punching bag in the rehab center's gym, sweat beading, vet sparred, grunting, his voice sharp as he coached. Navy's my route, he said, adjusting a kid's stance, ex-marine, shaky hands, his own steady, calloused. Keep your guard up. Honors your anchor, he barked. Echoes of boot camp, deployments, discipline carved in him, unbreakable. Thanks, Maddox, the kid panted. Riker nodded, limping to a bench, his leg ached. But he stood tall, teaching now, not fighting. Kira watched, clipboard in hand, center buzzing, his idea thriving. You're good at this, she said, pride there, soft. Trained for it, he replied, Navy grit turned inward, helping vets mend where he couldn't. Honors my code, he told her once. Here it lived, punching bags, therapy chairs, his squad's legacy. A stack of letters sat by his gear, Tatum's, unopened. Riker, I'm sorry, he tossed them. Thud. Trash swallowed her pleas. She's nothing, he muttered. Navy taught him loyalty, she'd snapped it. A vet older, scarred, clapped his shoulder. Heard the news? Those 2 locked up? Riker nodded. TV flashed earlier. Years added. Fraud, conspiracy. They paid, he said, voice flat, satisfied. His tip sealed it. You're a rock, Kira murmured, close now. His pulse ticked, friendship. Maybe more too soon. Navy made me, he grunted, stepping out, night air cool, Vegas fading behind. Keep going, he told the stars, teaching, building, his war shifted, purpose clear. The center hummed, his anchor now, hers lost forever. Riker froze in the rehab lot, dusk heavy, as a shadow moved, big, fast, thug from Lennox's crew, knife gleaming. You're dead. The guy roared, charging. Riker sidestepped. Seal instincts snapping on, disarmed him in seconds, crack. Blade clattering. Wrong move, he growled, fist slammed. Thud. Thug's nose broke, blood spraying, he dropped, out cold. I'm untouchable, Riker snarled, breathing hard, legs screaming, cops get this trash, revenge lingering. But he'd survived again. Kira rushed out, heard the fight. Riker. Fear in her yell, he waved her off, handled. She stared, wide-eyed, you're insane. He grinned, rare SEAL stuff. She shook her head, too calm, he shrugged, trained that way. The thug groaned. Riker kicked the knife away, clink. Cop sirens wailed, closing in. Lennox's last gasp, he muttered, checking his phone. News pinged, mobile shanked in jail. He's gone, he told Kira, a voice flat, just to double down. He limped to his truck. You okay? She called, concern real. Always, he said, half true, adrenaline fading, scars alive. SEALs forever, he thought, desert, cave, this, unbreakable, even now. Stay for coffee. She offered, he paused, yeah, first yes in months. Cops hauled the thug, Riker watched, stone cold, his edge held. They're trap dust. They're done, he told her, walking back, Vegas lights dimmed, his fight won, instinct sharp. You're a wall, she said, smile faint, he nodded, cracked, maybe, rebuilding slow. The night swallowed sirens, peace crept in, his way. Riker wiped sweat from his brow, the rehab lot quiet, gravel still stained from the thug's blood, cops long gone, lights fading into Vegas dusk. I survive, he muttered, knife fight replayed, quick, brutal, his leg throbbed. But he stood, alive, always. He was nothing, he told Kira, leaning on his truck. She'd watched, pale, Lennox's last swing. She nodded, slow, your steel. He grunted, had to be desert, cave, now this, survival was his spine, forged hard. The thug groaned. Cuffed, hauled off. Payback, he'd hissed. Riker smirked. Try harder. You're nuts, Kira said, half laugh, handing him water. Cool, steadying. I outlast, he replied. Sipping, thinking of Tatum, Lennox, cells, graves, they'd aimed to bury him missed. Always do, he added, voice low. Her eyes held his. Respect. Worry something else? Jaced say the same, she murmured. He nodded, chest tight. Squad's ghost lingered, avenged. He limped to the center. Check the gym? She asked. He agreed. Vets sparred inside. His shadow loomed, unbroken. Survived them, he thought. Tatum's lies, Lennox's hit. Turned it back, won. You're limping bad, Kira noted. Close now, sit. He waved it. Fine. Lie. Pain was fuel, not chains. Cops called. Thugs linked, she said. Phone buzzed. Lennox's crew crumbling. Good. He growled. Survival wasn't luck. It was him, standing when they fell. Let's eat, she urged. He followed, slow, night settling. His war fading, scars loud. I'm here, he told the dark, proof he'd outlived their trap again. Riker drove north, Montana wind cutting sharp, new dawn, new dirt, Vegas a smudge behind. A fresh start, he muttered, truck-loaded gear, not ghosts, his limp easing with miles. Tatum's cell gray, tight, her postcard hit the precinct, enjoy the cage. I rebuilt. A mistake, she sobbed, reading it. Bars her mirror now, dress swapped for drab. Riker's words her echo, too late. I broke us, she whispered, pin-scratching another letter he'd burn, her pleas dust, his freedom wide. He stopped, a diner, coffee steaming moved. The waitress asked, he nodded, Montana short. Final, Vegas was their tomb, not his. A new fight, he thought, teaching vets, mending Kira's number in his pocket, not love, not yet, hope, maybe. Tatum's POV shifted, cell stank, sweat, regret. She'd gambled him, lost. Lennox's blood on her hands too, indirect. But there. He won, she gasped, postcard crumpling, her cage his gift, karmic and cold. Riker sipped. Bitter, good. Highway stretched, open his. A life, he said. Voice steady. Jace's haven thrived. His mark, her pleas piled. Ignored. Montana loomed. Trees, quiet. His war done. Her trap flipped. Checkmate hers. I'm free, he told the road. Truck growled. Past shed. New dawn broke. Hers dimmed. Locked tight. A ghost no more. he vowed, driving on. Her sobs faded. His silence roared. Victory his, clear and sharp. Lennox bled out in a prison shower, tiles slick, red pooling, shanked by an inmate. Sharp, fast, his gasps wet, fading. Warzone, he choked. Ironic. Penthouse swapped for this. Concrete, screams. His empire ash. Vegas a memory. Riker won. He rasped. Knife twisted. Pain flared. Eyes dimming. He'd fought sharks. Tatum. Lost. Her betrayal. His greed. Trap's echo claimed him. She did this. He gurgled. Wrong. Riker's shadow loomed. Unseen. Cops wrote it. Gang hit. Close enough. Riker saw it. Montana TV. Inmate dead. Lennox Voss, beer in hand, stone-faced. Warzone got you, he muttered. Justice doubled. His tip sparked it. Sharks finished it. Your fight, he told the screen. Lennox's glare-frozen, power gone, blood price paid. Jace's ghost nodded, avenged. He deserved it. Kira said, phone call, her voice steady. You okay? He grunted. Yeah, lie, satisfaction cut deep. War's end. His win. Prison buzzed. Lennox's cell empty. His Warzone shrank. Hers stretched. Years left. Riker sipped. Bitter. Montana night vast. His truck idled. New dirt. New peace. Vegas chaos theirs. Not his. Trap's done. He whispered. Warzone theirs. His battlefield cleared. Victory quiet. Final a checkmate landed. Blood washed it clean. Riker sat by a Montana creek. Dusk settling. Water rushed. Cold and clear. His fishing line taut. Snap. A trout fought. Lost. Their trap was mine, he muttered. Thinking Vegas. Lennox's blood. Tatum's bars. His flipped script. He'd rigged it. Emails. Hacks. Chaos. Turned their hit into his snare. Tight. Flawless. They fell. He said. Voice low. Reeling in. Empty hook. Like their plan. Broke when he pulled. He lit a fire. Crackle. Mission files from his truck. Last traces. Fed the flames. Smoke curled. Sharp. Past burned clean. Flashback. Tatum's whispers. He's gone. Lennox's cash. His squad's dust. Anger flared. Gone now. Fire ate it. Trap's over, he told the night. Kira's call earlier. Lennox's dead. Safe now. He'd grunted. Yeah. Truth. His cage flipped theirs. Checkmate landed. Her tears. His end. His hands clean, heavy. They built it, he said. Files ash now. Standing. Limp easing. Montana vast his. Dinner. Kira'd pushed. He'd smiled. Soon. First thaw in him. War's echo fading. Trap sprung. There's eternal. He kicked dirt. Thud. Fire died. Truck loomed. New life. Old scars. Hers locked, his free. They trapped themselves, he whispered. Wind carried it. Justice's bait. Hooked them deep. Peace crept, slow. Real a checkmate is. Trap done. Kira sat across Riker at her cabin table. Montana dark outside. Coffee steamed. Her voice soft. Tell me. He paused, spoon clinked. Then spilled. Desert. Cave. Tatum's knife. Lennox's cash. His squad's graves. Her eyes wide. You turned pain into power, she said. Awed. His jaw tightened. Had to voice rough. Coffee burned. Truth too. Learning to live again is win. Her hand brushed his. Warm, steady. He didn't pull. First time. Lennox shanked, she said. TV buzzed. Prison riot. Tatum's locked. Years. He nodded. Learned late. Their lesson. His trap. Her betrayal. His survival. Taught him steel. Her ruin. Kira leaned. You're more. He grunted. Maybe doubt lingered. Jace's grin flashed. Avenged. Learning peace now slow. Her smile cracked him. You're here truth. Vegas ash. Montana is school. Her calm is teacher. Tentative. Real. He stood. Window star sharp. Learned who I am. He said seal. Survivor. Not victim. Her chair scraped. Proud. He turned. Yeah, first yes, clear. Her nod sealed it. Learning wasn't done. Hers was checkmate taught him. Life waited. Coffee cooled. His war ended. Hers began. Bars her classroom. Is open free. Riker spoke at Jace's haven. Montana branch. Vets packed. Chairs scraped. His voice steady. This is his legacy, Kira said. Introducing Jace's photo loomed, smiling. His squad's two, Riker's scars spoke. Limpid, words didn't survive for them. He said, chest tight, medals in his truck. Not here, honor was this. Bets clapped, rough, real. His story spread, whispers, hero, he shrugged, vengeance enough, his fight won quietly. Tatum's locked, Lennox is gone. Yvette yelled. Riker nodded. They paid flat. Satisfied, his tip, his trap, his justice. Kira smiled close. You're good, he grunted, trying his world rebuilt. Brick by brick, hers ash, his squad's ghost rested, avenged. Center buzzed, his mark, her letters burned. Unread, his piece earned, hard true. Stay, she asked, after coffee offered. He nodded. Yeah, wall down slow, his life now, not hers. Vegas dust, Montana is. He stepped out, night crisp, truck waited. His story, he told stars. Jace, squad, his pain flipped, victory. Kira's laugh drifted, warm, his fight shifted, living, not killing. Checkmate his, hers lost, legacy stood. Vets thrived, his win clear, final. Tatum sat on her cell cot, the prison air stale, sweat, metal, her hands trembling as she scratched another letter. Riker, forgive me, ink smudged, tears dropped, drip, useless, he'd never read it. I'm the wife, she whispered, past tense, gray jumpsuit her shroud, red dress a ghost, Vegas nights with Lennox, cash, kisses, dust now. I broke us, she said, voice cracked, staring at bars, his postcard mocked, enjoy the cage, her trap flipped, his win, her end, karmic, cold. She paced, 2 steps, turn, replaying it, his silence, her lies, pancakes flipped while plotting, Lennox's gun, money gone, he knew, she gasped, truth late. His eyes, sharp, saw through, her mask slipped, too slow. FBI knocked, cuffs clicked, her world shrank, his grew, Montana free, her bars tight. I loved him, she lied, mirror scratched, love was greed, Jace's blood, his squad's, hers too, indirect, guilt gnawed, sharp, unseen, a guard banged, mail's back, unopened. She sank, sobbing, he's gone, wife no more, sell her stage, empty, quiet. Years stretched, his shadow loomed, victory hers to rot in, checkmate final, her ruin, his peace, letter crumpled, tossed thud, hope dead, bars her truth, wife lost, alone. Riker flipped a Montana paper, inmate dead, Lennox Voss, coffee steamed, diner quiet, his face blank, boyfriend got his, he muttered, tossing it, clink, on the table, shanked, bloody, prison's price, Lennox's swagger, penthouse, Porsche, bled out, tiles red, justice doubled. His tip sparked, sharks finished. Deserved it, he said, voice flat, sipping, bitter, fitting, Lennox's end, his squad's echo, avenged, checkmate landed, cold, complete. Flashback, Lennox's grin, traps flawless, Tatum's nod, his death planned. Riker's leg ached, proof they failed. Vegas king, now meet. Thugs beat him, Shank sealed it, he fought. He told the cup, lost, her too, both caged, one gone, his hand unseen. FBI took her, prison took him, Riker's trap, perfect, final. Boyfriend, he scoffed, love twisted, greed burned, ashes left, his win, clear. Kira called, saw it, done now? Yeah, short, satisfied, coffee cooled, Montana wind howled, his dirt, Lennox's Warzone, hers, ended, his free, paper crumpled, tossed, checkmate, his boyfriend buried, wife locked, victory quiet, coffee drained, justice served, his way done. Riker stood on a Montana ridge, boots sunk in damp earth, the wind howling fierce, pine trees bent, whispering secrets as the sun bled red across the horizon, raw, untamed, like his fight. His truck idled behind, dust-caked, Vegas a faint scar now, miles and lives away, his hands shoved deep in his jacket, scars itching under denim, proof he'd outlasted their game. They planned it for love and money, he said, voice rough, carried off by the gust, Tatum's sly whispers in their kitchen, he's gone. Lennox, her fingers tracing stacks of cash. Lennox's smug nod, clean hit. His squad's blood-soaking sand, Jace's last gasp. His own crawl from hell, all for their twisted dream. He kicked a rock. Clack. It tumbled down the slope, lost in shadows, same as them now. Her in a cell, gray and small. His postcard her only light. Enjoy the cage. She'd sobbed, crumpled it. Too late. Lennox under dirt, shanked, red pooling. Prison his grave. Riker's trap flipped it. Perfect, ruthless. I ended it for me, he growled. Thinking of the center, Jace's haven. 2 million of their greed turned to beds, walls, vets laughing. His tip to the FBI. Cuffs snapping, shank falling. Karma's weight, his hand. Checkmate landed. Hard, clean, satisfying. Justice served cold. Flashback hit. The cave's roar, sand choking lungs. Her emails, coordinates locked. Lennox wiring death. His leg torn, stitched in dark. For us, she'd purred. Lie, love a mask. Money their god. He'd survived. Turned it. Hacked their world. Leaked her words. Watched her fall. Him bleed. His piece carved here. Montana vast. Earned. Raw. Real. Wine stung his face. Alive. Free. It's done, he told. The sky stars flickered. Jace's grin. Ghosts nodded. Avenged, they chased it. Love twisted. Money dirty. Is duty won strong, unbroken. Checkmate is final. Here his truck rumbled up. Dust swirling, she stepped out. Coat flapping dinner. Her smile warm. Real. Unlike Tatum's. Her brown eyes steady. He paused. Wind tousling his hair. Yeah, voice soft. First step, new dirt. Hers locked. His open. Vets healed. Money flipped. Love hinted. Not hers. His way, slow, sure. Wind carried it for me. He repeated. Truck growled. Ridge faded. Her laugh drifted. Life waited. Clear, strong, final. He turned. Ridge fast. His shadow long. They lost. I won. He said. Voice firm. Closure hit. Deep. Whole. His war ended. There's eternal. Her bars. His sky. Lennox's blood. His breath a checkmate sealed. Justice roared. Quiet now. Peace is prize. Earned. True. Time to live, he whispered. Kira waved. He walked. Limp fading. Montana his Vegas theirs. Buried done. Now, hold up. This tale's done. But the fire's still crackling. Loved Riker's revenge? His grit flipping their greed? Hit that subscribe. Smash the like. Share this ride with your crew. Spread the karma. Picture yourself on that ridge. Wind in your face. Were you standing if you flipped your own trap? Drop your spot, your city, your vibe, in the comments. Let's hear your echo. Where's your Montana?